Now, recent years and decades have seen millennials or Generation Y dissected and discussed ad nauseum by leaders around the world. However, 2020 marked a significant transition point in the whole generational discussion because it was the dawn of what's now being referred to as the post-millennial era. Now, this doesn't mean that millennials are no longer an important group to focus on from a strategy perspective. However, what it means is that there are some new kids on the block. And there's a group who are hot on the heels of the millennials that we cannot afford to ignore. This group, known as Generation Z or Generation Z, depending on where you live in the world, began graduating from university and college in 2020, and they are a group to watch. They're a group we cannot afford to ignore. After all, they are your future workforce and your future customers. Now, who are they? Well, they're defined loosely as the group born between the late 90s and the early 2010s. They're a large cohort. About 35% of the global population belong to this Generation Z or Generation Z group, and they wield a combined spending power of $143 billion. Now, like every generation before them, Generation Z are defined by their own unique youth culture and set of attitudes. When it comes to their consumer values, altruism is important for this group. 85% of them believe that brands should be about something more than just profit. And this often comes back to issues of sustainability and social equality, which are front of mind for this group. In a professional context, Generation Z claim they're actually more driven by meaning than just money, with almost 2/3 saying they'd rather do something of significance rather than merely earning a big pay packet. This has significant implications for engaging this group as employees. Now, interestingly, they're also open to new products and brands in a radical way, far more than other generations. In fact, according to research conducted recently, just over half of this group, about 51%, said that they had a desire to try new products, even when one that they liked or knew about was on offer. This means we cannot take their loyalty for granted. Now, to understand Generation Z and how to engage with them, the first place we need to start is where this group are congregating, especially online and in a digital environment. To this point, up on the screen behind me are 6 of the apps that Generation Z are using most frequently right now, and I wonder how many of them you actually know. This is one of those moments where you start to feel a little bit old when you look at this list and go, I only know a couple of them. Now, in case you're in the dark and not quite sure what these apps are, I'll put you out of your misery here. These are the 6 that you need to be across, because this is where your young team members are hanging out right now. You need to understand, you need to get your head around them. Bearing in mind that, before you know it, these apps will be old news and Generation Z will have moved on. Now, in terms of how this group communicate, it's also important to understand the language that they use. And up on the screen behind me are some of the common emojis that Generation Z are using when they communicate with each other. Now, as you look at those, I wonder if you can guess what these emojis mean if you're a member of that Gen Z cohort. If you thought the second top one was to do with having a cold, or maybe the bottom one there, or second from the bottom was just smiling at someone, you may be surprised to discover what these actually really mean. Now, the reason this matters is because you could easily be miscommunicating with Gen Zs either in your marketplace or in your staff team and have no idea at all. Now, looking more broadly than merely the apps and the emojis that Gen Z are using online, it's the way this group approached digital communication that holds some of the most important lessons for businesses and brands who want to connect with this generational cohort. Rather than simply viewing, commenting, and sharing content the way millennials did, Generation Z are passionate about 2 things: curating and co-creating material. In fact, the head of creator product marketing at Spotify, Sam Dubloff, puts it well. He said this, it's the openness of Gen Z to create, meme and remix content that is driving the most significant change in engagement, but it's also blurring the lines between creator and consumer. This is significant from a marketing perspective. Now, looking at Gen Z's social platform of choice, TikTok, a number of recent examples of viral co-created content offer an insight into what it takes for brands to win with Generation Z. Good case in point, an example here is that of Martinelli's. Now, this 153-year-old apple juice maker in the US became a viral TikTok phenomenon in May 2020 amongst Gen Zs, when users began posting videos of themselves biting into the plastic bottles to find out if by doing so it really did sound like biting into a real apple. Now, that might sound crazy. Have a look at what actually went viral. Check out the video here.
Okay guys, so we have these apple juice that when you bite the plastic, it's supposed to sound like you're eating an apple, so I'm gonna try it. Does that kind of sound like it? Oh my
Now this might seem crazy, but within a week, the Martinelli hashtag had attracted more than 28 million views on TikTok, and sales immediately skyrocketed. In fact, it was a similar story for their beverage brand Ocean Spray and their viral success on TikTok at about the same time as well. Now, as consumers, Generation Z represent a sizable opportunity, but they can also be really difficult to decode. In fact, in the words of Pablo Stefanini, who's an expert in this area, he said, Gen Z are a tough nut to crack. They break many of the rules that brands had previously taken for granted. It is critically said to adapt in order to remain relevant. Although millennials will continue to make their presence known for many years to come, it's time for organisations and leaders to recognise the opportunities that their younger cousins, Generation Z, represent. This cashed up and engaged young group are buying different things in different ways and for different reasons. Businesses that ignore or underestimate this change do so at their peril.